Good evening. Hey, guess who it is? It's your boy Jacob Wayne hitting you with another Jacob Wayne show. Once again, not sure how long this one's gonna go because I'm a little bit rusty, but I figure, hey, things have gotten into a little bit of a groove with me lately, so why not try to get back on the horse and do some more episodes? With that, yeah, that's all I got. I'll see you guys next time. Nah, I kid. I joke. These are the things you can come to expect from the Jacob Wayne Show. No. I have halted the job hunt lately. I think I talked about that in the last episode, but that was part of the reason I was slowing down on the podcast was just too fucking busy. Um, you know, uh, painting, band stuff, looking for a job, taking care of some house chores, finishing up work I was doing over the last few years. It takes a toll. Kind of makes it hard to do a podcast sometimes, especially if it's not really what you do for money or paying bills or whatever. So recently, I've just had a huge influx of commissions for painting. So it's been keeping me afloat money wise, and just wrapping up a little bit of the work I'm doing has been helping with that as well. So I'm gonna start the job hunt in January again, and we'll see how that goes then. But I'm kind of thinking I can get this going again. And like I've said before, the format's gonna be a little different. I can't get my boy Kellen on here regularly, so we'll have him again here and there, but just he won't be a consistent co-host like he was at the beginning, which it's too bad, but also makes doing the podcast a lot easier. Just me doing my thing. And we'll see about having more guests in the future. But yeah, maybe these podcasts will be 30 minutes, an hour, whatever. Maybe even 15 sometimes. But one thing I'm going to start doing is movie watch alongs. Um, you might think Mystery Science Theater or some of these movie reaction channels you've seen on YouTube. Just Trust Ash is one I really like. The Homies, Girls from Bulgaria, I do believe. Great channels, love them. There's another comedy reaction channel I really like, Frankenstein's Lab. And I just realized I watch those so much and really enjoy them. And I don't think I could have the same enthusiastic reaction to films that they have or laugh as hard as Frankenstein's Lab does. But I have a wealth of knowledge, I think, with film, and it would be fun to get into that and maybe watch some more obscure stuff. A lot of those channels will watch classics that they maybe haven't seen, like The Matrix or the Marvel movies, whatever. And so I think I could kind of cover a different area of film where it's a little more obscure, and that'll be the stuff I haven't seen for the most part. Um, and I'm going to be doing that with my buddies now that I've figured out this OBS software a little bit more. You'll still just mainly be looking at my mug for the whole video, um, at least initially. But right about there on the screen, I'll be showing the film, and you can go to my Patreon eventually once this is done, and you can watch the whole film with us and enjoy it. We we'll make our jokes here and there, of course, but we're not going to be trying to reach for the joke every chance we get. That's not what it'll be. It's way more of a reaction, first time watch reaction stuff, and a little bit of film analysis, but with some fun banter. Maybe we'll do drinking games here and there. It should be a good time. And we'll be mostly focusing, I believe, on either really obscure, so bad they're good movies, a lot of 80s horror, maybe every now and again getting into like just some old, strange stuff from like the 60s and 70s that maybe could be really good, maybe is really bad, whatever, but we'll find out, won't we? So I will upload kind of consolidated clips of those watchings and put that up on YouTube. But if you want the full thing, that'll be on my art Patreon, which is Art JWB, Jacob Wayne Bryner on Patreon. I mostly have that up there for my art thing, but I kind of figured I could just blend the podcast and art thing and at least initially give me $5 a month. Helps me pay a phone bill here and there and keeps me doing what I would like to be doing for my job, which is podcasting, painting, music, that kind of thing. So enough of that. I guess music update. My band Gamma Pa, I believe, released our new single Luck Tiger in between this episode and the last one I uploaded. So go check that out. Look up Luck Tiger wherever you listen to your Gamma Pa music. And with that, we'll get into the episode. So, first things first, of course, what am I sipping on? Well, I need my coffee. It's 5:19 right now as I record this on a Sunday. I try to stop drinking coffee at about 5, but woke up late. It's one of those days. Kind of tied one on last night. So, yeah, coffee. But this will be my last cup. Because I'm going to transition over to my cocktails. My cocktails. That's from that movie Bronson, a weird character in that. He always just says cocktails. And you're like, man. Anyway, this is my new Jawa cup. That's where I'm going to be drinking all of my sweet, sweet sauce. And I learned about a new drink. And forgive me, but I'm going to have to do a little bit of web searching. I will try to keep this as minimal as possible. But it is grapefruit and tequila. And I always forget the name of this because I barely learned it. So, of course. Paloma. I keep wanting to say Palomasol or Paloma, Palima, Perineum. No, Paloma. Now, this drink is maybe cheating on the Paloma. I don't know. But it is 2 shots of tequila and a grapefruit seltzer. Actually, today it's a lime one because yesterday I tried grapefruit juice, then a lime seltzer, and tequila, and I thought, oh, that'll be good. I didn't really like it as much. I kind of just prefer to drink my grapefruit juice as grapefruit juice and then just do tequila and a grapefruit seltzer. It's nice and fresh, doesn't make me feel all like, bruh. Because, total side note, I think I might be getting slightly allergic to beer. I even have like one light beer and it makes me feel all stuffed up and fucky and makes my armpits sting. I think I've talked about that in the past. And I looked that up and they're like, that could be an allergic reaction. So, you know, if I do, it's not that bad, but it definitely makes drinking beer a little less pleasant. So when I have the tequila and seltzer, I've found that I feel pretty good and don't feel like shit the next day. oddly enough, when I've done gin and seltzer or vodka and seltzer, if I have too many, I can feel like shit. Whereas if I have too many of this, it's not like I feel great, but it's more manageable for some reason. So anyway, it's my poor man's Paloma, which, still sounds dirty, but I'm into it. Jawa. Jacob Wayne, old nickname of mine. Now, I guess real briefly, go Kraken. The new season started. Best of luck this season. I won't talk about sports much on this podcast, but the Utah Jazz also started their season. And until the Seattle Supersonics come back, that is my team. I will always love them. When the Sonics are back, they'll be my number two. They had a crazy offseason. They offloaded all their stars and got a bunch of young bucks to come play. Not young Milwaukee Bucks, just, But the theory was that they were going to tank this season because they have a bunch of first round picks, and then they're hoping to get this new guy that everybody's talking about, Wembanyama. Hope I'm saying that right. And that was just the narrative for this season. Like, Utah's going to lose as much as they can, and that's that. Enjoy what you can. And they came out with those new uniforms that all the fucking boomers hate, but honestly, I kind of like them. And kind of kicked ass in the first two games. Really surprised everybody. And I'll tell you one thing. It was really fun to watch. They were like really playing as a team, playing defense, really going at it. It's way more exciting than the Jazz have been the last few years. And even though I love Gobert and, Donovan Mitchell, I'll always miss Joe Jingles Ingles. They're gone. They were getting a little stale. There was supposedly drama in the locker room. Hard to say one way or the other, but either way, they were almost a guaranteed first or second round exit every year. They weren't going anywhere, so they blew it up, starting fresh. I'm into it. It's a fun team to watch again. So, that is it for sports talk. Go Jazz, go Kraken, as far as I am concerned. Let's get into music. Now, I told a friend of mine that I would review an album because I didn't want to tell him what I thought on the old face of my books. So this is a little old at this point, I guess by today's standards. But the new Mars Volta album, which is self-titled, that came out, maybe a month or so, or maybe two now. It's hard to remember. But that came out, and from what I gather on the internet, some mixed reviews. Pissed off some old school Mars Volta fans because it's a pretty mellow, almost electronic at times album compared to other Mars Volta records. And so they were like waiting for that like really kind of frantic, high energy, chaotic thing that Mars Volta is pretty known for, at least in my opinion. And they really mellowed it out and made it chill. I'd say every song on this album is pretty mellow. And so I'm not the biggest Mars Volta fan. I like them. I think my favorite album from them is Francis the Mute. That might be their most critically acclaimed album. Maybe it's their first one. Oh, wow. Can't think of the title. It's Deloused in the Comatorium, right? Which is also a great record, but I lean towards the second one a bit more. But I have to be in a real specific mood to put those albums on because they're kind of frantic, as I was saying. And as they kept releasing albums, I loved the album artwork, but I kind of just was never really drawn to the next records and never disliked it, just never found myself in the mood. So what I like about this new record is that it's way more my pace and my speed with what I like out of bands, especially bands that have like some Latin flavor and things like that that kind of slowed it down a little and chilled out. And I really like this album a lot. Um, I can totally understand how if you loved what the Mars Volta was doing over their last albums, that this album might bug you. But for me, this is like one of the most accessible and gets me more into those older records because now I have this spectrum of vibe. Like if I want to relax, I just throw on this new one, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I want a little bit more high energy. I'll just go to the other albums. Uh, that being said, it hasn't stayed in my rotation very much, and that's not so much of a criticism of this album because honestly, lately I've been all over the map with my music listening. I'm jumping around a lot, and I've been mostly listening to alternative 80s stuff and alternative 70s stuff and older, just kind of straightforward 70s stuff. A lot of international um, jazz and things of that nature, like kind of pseudo jazz. I don't know if it's officially that, but kind of what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. But like weird mix of genre stuff like city pop reggae from Japan. Like there's a really great channel on YouTube called My Analog Journal, and they'll just do a DJ set playing songs from kind of an obscure genre like Turkish 70s funk or Russian disco music from the 80s. It's pretty great stuff. And so a lot of newer releases and especially for me like rock and roll, I've been kind of like, whatever. If I'm listening to rock, it's like old stuff. I just a bunch of rap and rock and metal lately just hasn't been scratching my itch. I'm sure I'll come back around to it. I always do. But so long story short, this album I haven't thrown on again for a minute. I do tend to do that a lot with records though. Like I'll listen to them a shit ton when they come out and then kind of set them aside for a while and then see if they sneak back in and then they kind of regularly come on every now and again. I'm trying to remember if the album came out this year or not. I guess I can look that up. But my favorite album of the year is If I Can't Have Love, I Want Power by Halsey, but all the music was done by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. So it's essentially like sort of a Halsey Nine Inch Nails pop record, and that's still my number one for the year, and I think that that is reflective of my mood. So the Mars Volta kind of matched that mood pretty well, but at the end of the day, still too Mars Volta to really hold my attention for too long. The album itself, let's see if I maybe had a favorite. The whole front half of this album is great. It's banger after banger. It flows really well. And yeah, somewhere maybe it's Cerulean or Palm Full of Crux. Somewhere around there. I'd have to go listen to it again, but it starts to fall off a little bit. I get a little bored with the album. Usually end up switching over to something else. Maybe part of that is also usually when I do my music listening, I'm walking from place to place, and so I only get through a certain section of the record before I'm like, well, turn that off. I gotta go do something else now. I don't really enjoy listening to music while I paint. I'm way more into listening to interviews or podcasts, books on tape. Kind of helps me focus a little better. But yeah, I guess for now that's my Mars Volta review. I think it's a great record. It helps show the spectrum of artistry that these guys are on. And I think it helps people like me warm up to their other stuff. I do understand old school fans maybe not being that into it, but all I would say to them is appreciate the fact that this is them being artists and creating something fresh and new and not being afraid to sort of mess with the formula a bit in order to be true to their artistic self. So if you find yourself not that into this, just remember I don't think this is coming from a place of like selling out or trying to mellow out to sell more albums. I think this is where they're at artistically. And you never know. Maybe the next album, if they make one, will be a little more frantic, high energy. It'll be more experimental again. With that, was there any new albums that came out that are worth talking about? Slipknot released a new one. I gave it a listen. Eh, I used to be a gigantic fan of them back in the day. First three albums, really loved the first two. The third one rubbed me a little weird initially, but then really fell in love with it. I would play Grand Theft Auto Vice City and just listen to that album on repeat and got really into it. Apparently, I think Corey Taylor, the singer, isn't that big of a fan of it. Or maybe just not a big fan of Rick Rubin. I've learned elements about Rick Rubin that make me kind of like question how much I really like the guy as a whole. And I'm not saying anything one way or the other because allegedly some of these things one way or the other. I won't even bother mentioning them because I don't know how accurate they are. But it's just, the rumor mill of the internet. But I really love Rick Rubin's work and what he's done with artists that I listen to. And yeah, long story short, I liked what he did to Slipknot, even if they didn't like what he did to them, which is essentially kind of reduce some of the bullshit and just like, nope, just do a bunch of songs and just raw creativity and throw it out there. And I think that they like to be a little more polished than they would like to admit. That's just my opinion. This new one is an example of that. It's just kind of by the numbers Slipknot album. It's going to have the obvious experimentation, and then it'll just drop into the same old Slipknot stuff and themes. And I don't know. I feel a little weird saying that because I feel like I want to respect the experimentation they did on this album, and I keep doing that when I say experimentation. It's because it feels a little trite to me too. It's like they're doing that particular thing with this song to seem like they're being experimental, when in reality they're just kind of doing a by the numbers experimental thing and then dropping into just another Slipknot song. I'll give it a few more listens. I wouldn't say it's bad. It just bored me. And maybe that's attached to what I was talking about earlier. Maybe metal's just not scratching the itches like it used to lately. And so I'm just like, yeah, alright, yeah, that was pretty heavy. Cool. Let's see here. Any new releases worth mentioning? Fun little danceable thing from Clang Phonics, a new track, Separate Paths. That's just some dancey, smooth, ethereal techno stuff. New single from Bonobo that I haven't listened to because I've decided I'm just going to wait for the full release to come out before I really let the Bonobo thing go. Because I think Bonobo albums I kind of look at them as a whole big piece. It's like a whole state of mind. So I don't get into the singles as much. Oh, all right. Here's a new pop record that I found myself enjoying quite a bit. We'll see if it holds my attention for very long. But this album, American Girl, spelled Gurl, by Kilo Kish, Kilo dash Kish. I can't remember why I started following her. It was one of her old releases, of course, but can't really remember which one. Let's take a look-see. Oh, it was her 2016 album Reflections in Real Time, which I thought was interesting and creative. I need to give it another listen again. But yeah, this American Girl seems a little more modern, straightforward pop stuff you would expect to hear these days. But that being said, pretty groovy, pretty danceable. I liked it. I think I'm going to add that on my 2022 playlist real quick if I haven't already. Yep, it's on there now. I didn't do that yet. So, if you're into dancey, poppy, just have a couple drinks, clean the kitchen. American Girl, Kilo Kish, pretty good. With that, let's get into movies, shall we? Let me pull that up. Recently, my boy Neal was in town. This is during October. Getting a little stuffy in the nose if you can't tell. Sorry about that. Muted the mic just for you while I did the gross sound. Let's take a look at my letterbox diary to remember all this stuff. So yeah, my boy Neal visited. October. It's October Spooky Season Movie Fest. And him and I have been making lists of so bad they're good movies. I've been watching the best of the worst stuff from Red Letter Media. Um, that's my list so far of things to check out. But a lot of these came from those episodes, and some of it he's watching. I think the show The Yard. Sorry if I'm getting it wrong, but they've been going through the Disney Channel movies and kind of critiquing those. So we watched a bit of that as well. When he first got here, we dived into a very nostalgic trilogy for me. I forgot it was a trilogy. I thought it was like two movies. But I was looking for a specific one, and the trilogy is the Not Quite Human trilogy of Disney Channel movies from the 80s that seeped into the 90s a little bit. Uh, they are terrible. Silly ridiculousness. We did not finish Not Quite Human or Not Quite Human 2. Not worth it. We were trying to get to Still Not Quite Human, which is the third installment. And that one has a little bit more edge to it. The premise of the whole thing is there's a scientist who makes a robot boy because he wants a son. And so the first one is Robot Boy goes to high school. Not Quite Human 2 is Robot Boy goes to college. And then in the third one, Robot Boy's become a little more human and he's working with his dad. His dad's trying to share something about the heart thing he's developed for this AI. And this big evil, like Nazi-esque bad guy company wants to steal the technology, so they kidnap his father, and they've created an AI of his father. So now the father's a robot, and Chip, the robot boy, gets in there and messes with him and turns him into an ally, and then they're going to go rescue his dad. The movie kind of creeped me out when I was little, and that's what we were seeking out. It gets for a Disney movie, mind you, gets a little dark with the kidnapped father plot, and he's just in this room and he's like kind of desperate, and there's a weird Terminator robot in it, and that one I gave 2 stars out of 5. We finished it though. It was funny. We got our laughs. We then moved on to a 1977 film, Kathy's Curse, which I gave 2 stars out of 5, but I did love it. But I can't say it's a good movie, but I will say, out of the movie fests, we we quoted this one a lot. This is one from the best of the worst episodes of Red Letter Media, so go check that out if you want to see clips. Yeah, some people are giving it 4.5 stars, some are 2.5. But the whole movie starts out with like very minimal, like, "Hey, Dad, like, what are you doing? Like, where's Mom and my brother?" And the dad just goes, "Your mother's a bitch." And throughout the whole movie, everybody's like calling each other like a bitch. "You stupid old dry whore, you stupid bitch." And you're like, whoa, like, calm down, 70s. But it's got some kind of interesting effects and moments, and it was funny. We enjoyed ourselves. We did a drinking game to that and had a great time with it. It was one of the highlights of the movie fest. We then knew that Hocus Pocus 2 had come out. We've talked about Hocus Pocus before on this podcast, so we don't really got to deep dive that. But if you remember correctly, Sarah Jessica Parker in the first Hocus Pocus was one of my key sexual awakenings. She was like one of my sexual horcruxes, or is that how that works? Like that, Cindy Crawford poster, lipstick commercial on the TV, and I was like, "Bruh!" And then I turned into the perverted young man and now old man that you see before you. Hocus Pocus holds a dear spot in my heart, is all I'm trying to say. And apparently it did with Shockey and my buddy Neal. Like, all right, we enjoyed the hell out of the first one. And then Neal and I got into a little tussle of arguing about like whether Hocus Pocus 2 is just going to be that fan servicey, like, "Hey, you remember the talking cat? Remember the fit?" And I'm a little cynical, and he wasn't so much. And I was like, "Look, dude, they're doing this all the time with new like reboots and sequels. It's like I think a new term. Hold on a second. New term is legacy sequel, and I'm a little just tired of it. But the next night we watched Hocus Pocus 2, and I will say it is definitely that. It's a legacy sequel, but they did a pretty good job with it. They didn't get overbearing with nostalgic references. They told a new story. It was a lot more about sisterhood and covens, and my only beef with it really is that every male character in the show is a bumbling idiot. And then it was all about girl power and crystals and bleh, which I don't like that woo woo shit either. All that being said, pretty enjoyable. We had a good time watching both those movies. Now, perhaps the greatest film we watched this whole movie fest was Miami Connection, which came out in 1987. I don't want to tell you too much about it, but I gave it 5 stars out of 5. I didn't tell you my Hocus Pocus ratings, by the way. Hocus Pocus 1 is 3.5. I like it. Hocus Pocus 2 is 3 stars, so not as good, but I like it. Miami Connection's 5 out of 5, and it's the best kind of terrible movie. And I just highly recommend watching it. I don't want to really tell you too much, but it's like about a band called Dragon Sound that has to fight other bands and ninja clans in Miami. And along the way, they just reaffirm that friends forever, friends for eternity, loyalty, honesty, but not because we're going to win. Yeah, it's great shit. Watch it. Hold on, let me take a sipsy. And then another sipsy. Ah, coffee Paloma. We then got into Hack O Lantern, which we did have a good time watching that and doing the drinking game thing. I gave that 2 out of 5 stars because it does have a lot of like dull moments with some great moments. What was cool about it is Mac's dad from Always Sunny in Philadelphia is like the main anti-hero protagonist. Something it's kind of I'm trying to remember if he ended up being kind of the anti-hero. But it's about this creepy old grandpa who has like a Satanist cult in this small town. He can't understand them. He's like, well, I haven't seen that boy in about 13 years. I'm going to make none to here, child here. And he's always like, yeah, I'm going to do that little devil sign right on your face. It's pretty hilarious. His character. Um, he. Let me see here. The movie is essentially just a slasher flick with weird deviations into other stuff, but there's a great part where Mac's dad has like a headset on, listening to his tape player, and he's like having like a fantasy about being in a rock band, and there's like this voodoo sexy witch woman, devil woman or something, like dancing to it and shooting lasers out of her eyes, and it's like the devil's son, and it kind of rocked. That moment ruled. So the song kind of stuck around for the week, as well as Miami Connection song, "Friends for Eternity, Loyalty, Honesty," and then Kathy's curse, "Your mother's a bitch." So we were having a good time. Uh, didn't really hold up though. Overall, just had some good funny moments. So 2 out of 5. We then watched one of these Disney movies, Wendy Wu Homecoming Warrior, which it had enough terrible, not so well thought out references to Chinese history and Chinese culture that's always going to suck me in because that's what I studied in college. I have a degree in East Asian Studies with a minor in Chinese, which just sounds like such a weird degree to have nowadays, but especially as a white cis male. But what can you do? It's interesting stuff. And it kept me hooked, and it's bad, but in a really fun, silly way. And we had a good time drinking to that. So if you're into like kind of wushu films or kung fu films, Chinese cinema with a Disney Channel twist that's just silly and stupid, I would recommend this movie, but I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. We then got into Chopping Mall, which I gave 3.5 stars out of 5. 80s kids stuck in a mall because they decided to stay over the night to party because they're employees at a store. And these robots that are guard robots get struck by evil lightning and become evil and start killing everybody in the mall. So it's kind of like reverse uh, Short Circuit. Short Circuit was a military robot that's made to kill. Good lightning hits it, turns it into a good robot. This is the opposite. The robots are like, have a nice day, and then like blowing up people's heads and shit. Lots of titties. 80s. It was good. I liked it a lot. Ernest Scared Stupid. One movie that scared the shit out of me when I was little. If Hocus Pocus was the sexual awakening for me when I was young, even younger, Ernest Scared Stupid was the fucking troll in that movie. Scared the shit out of me, and I had a hard time shaking it when I was little. Still, I used to have nightmares about the witches from the movie Witches, or The Witches, whatever it is, Angelica Houston. I'd get kidnapped by witches in my nightmares. Then there was Ernest Scared Stupid. Jason from Friday the 13th got to me a little bit, but only because of the one scene where Kevin Bacon's on the mattress and he's smoking. And then a hand comes up and grabs his forehead. And then a drill comes through his throat. That really fucked me up. Like anything under the bed that did shit like that just freaked the fuck out of me. And Ernest Scared Stupid has that scene where girl's going to bed. She's like, oh, my little stuffed animal's on the ground. Looks over here, nothing's there. Goes down, picks up the stuffed animal, holds it, rolls back over, and suddenly the troll's in her bed, like, scared the shit out of me. Watched it again. It was an exhausting watch. God bless Ernest. I think What's his name? Let's find that out. I always forget it. Uh, Jim Varney, who played Ernest in all the Ernest things. Great comedic actor, I think. It's a little cheesy and cornball, especially these days, but I think he does a great job. And as I like to put it, Jim Varney walked so Jim Carrey could run. That's what I think, and I'm sticking to it. Eartha Kitt as the crazy old mad woman in this movie was also pretty wonderful. I liked her a lot. But other than that, the movie's exhausting, and I don't know if I would recommend it unless you're like into Ernest stuff or just shitty old movies. We then got into Black Roses, which had some wonderful moments. Big Pussy from The Sopranos was in it and gets sucked into a wall because there's an evil rock record being played on the turntable. It's basically it's another one of those best of the worst movies, and an evil metal band is coming to town, and it turns out the lead singer is like either the Antichrist or a demon or something, and all the kids in town go to their concerts and become followers of him, and then they go out and all the girls try to seduce these older men in town. Uh, Guys go find their dad's gun and then shoot their mom. Like it's all fucked up shit because metal bad. And there's just the one English teacher in town is like has like a really weird relationship with one of his students that's really inappropriate. But that being said, he's connected to her and the other students and cares about them, and then he's the one that has to go defeat the evil band. Uh yeah, some wildly gross sexually inappropriate stuff in it, like, well, these teenage girls are dressing slutty. I can't be held accountable for like touching them. Like what? Like, yeah, it's one of those '80s horror movies. Some really awesome, like the rock music transforms them into these demon creatures. The one student spoiler that the teacher is kind of sort of into, kind of not, kind of whatever. She's like tempting him, and he rejects her finally, and then she turns into this weird doofusy demon looking thing, and he like beats it with a tennis racket. So there's some really great moments in it, but overall, kind of a slog, boring. So 3 stars out of 5. If I forgot, Ernest Scared Stupid was 2 out of 5, but I liked it. 3 more. We did Edward Scissorhands. You know this movie. No need to go over it. 5 out of 5. It was just, we needed something good for spooky season that wasn't just silly stupidness. Just kind of cleanse our palate a little bit, so we loved that. We got into this one Six String Samurai. We turned it off after the first 15 minutes. Like it's one of those bad movies that thinks it's kind of trying to be ironically cool or whatever. Like it's doing this Tarantino Robert Rodriguez ripoff thing. It's like, but like you'll forgive us because we're just a bunch of guys just making a cheap movie, right? But we're like kind of cool. Like, no, you're not cool. You're annoying. Fuck you. I hate this movie. It's like so bad it makes you mad. Not so bad it's good. Gave it half a star. Hate this fucking movie. 1998 is when it came out. Which makes sense. Some of the late 90s so bad it's good movies just they got too self-aware of trying to be so bad they're good. In my opinion. We topped off the movie fest with Brain Damage, 5 out of 5 stars. Another movie from, let's find his name. Where's the director? We will find the director's name in a second here, but Don Henenlotter, I believe, is his name. If I got that wrong, I won't bother looking it up. But he made the movie Basket Case, which is a amazing. Oh, Frank Henenlotter. My bad. That's the director. Derp. It's right there. Basket Case came out in the 80s. It's an exploitation film. It's about a man who had a conjoined twin that's just this terrible, like, cancerous lump that gets removed, but they still have a psychic connection, and so he keeps his brother in a basket and carries him around and seeks revenge on the doctors that separated them. Wonderful movie. Go see it. If you can't handle kind of over the top exploitation, sexual stuff, or violent stuff, don't watch it. But it's so cornball that it's all right. But then this is his follow up movie, I do believe, Brain Damage, which has a continued theme of like the psychic connection to something, and he has this entity that he comes across. I can't remember the name of it, but you should watch the movie. But it's apparently this entity that's like been attached to like people's brains. He like sticks this thing through the back of their neck, and like it's essentially like this little mushroom creature that like makes him trip out and like loves having the juice. But then they also got to go out and kill somebody for him, or at least let this thing feed. And so it's once again another one of those like almost parasitic mind host psychic connection type things from this director, and it's really great. And I will say that the next week after Neal went home, our first movie night where I was testing the OBS software to see if we can do these movie watch alongs, we watched another movie from Frank Henenlotter named Frankenhooker, which, man, I just love this guy's movies and can't wait to watch more. I'm sure he probably has that moment where he becomes too self-aware of what he does and maybe falls off. They're not as good. He did Basket Case 2 and 3, and I think there's some others, but so far the first three I've seen from him, Basket Case, Brain Damage, Frankenhooker, amazing films. I fucking love them. So with that, let's take a look. See what ones would I absolutely recommend out of that. I would recommend Miami Connection, Chopping Mall, Edward Scissorhands, of course, and Brain Damage. Everything else is if you're sort of into that kind of thing. Um, the only one I would say kill in a fire is Six String Samurai. I fucking hated that movie. All right, with that, anything else to go over? There's no new video game stuff I've really been doing. Just got back in, trying to get back into Super Mario Galaxy, which was on the Wii, and one I always loved, and it's on Super Mario All Star 2, and so I'm going to be getting into that a little bit. I tried New World again after they added a new area and some stuff, but I'm still burnt out on that. I don't know if I'll be getting back into it. Still trying to get through Red Dead Redemption 2. I know it's an amazing game, beautiful, cinematic, da 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 da. But it just hasn't sucked me in yet. Maybe that's because I played GTA 5 for the first time not too long ago, so I'm just not ready for another game like that quite yet. I've been playing a shit ton of Slay the Spire and finally actually beating the game, which is nice. But that's really all I can say as far as vidgy games. No articles or anything coming to mind worth mentioning other than please vote in the midterms unless you're part of the Trump cult. Then stay home and yell at your TV screen. I don't wish you any ill will. I want you to have a happy life as best you can have, but just don't vote. That Trump's terrible. Those of us with a functioning brain know that. And yeah, I just voted Democrat down the whole thing. I'm not happy about that. I hope we can get back to a state where I'm like maybe even a little more ranked choice voting. Like, oh, like, no, yeah, I'll have the Libertarian, then the Democrat, then the Christian fascist MAGA Republican, or actually vote or no confidence, and then that, or you get what I'm saying. Hopefully, the midterms isn't too much of a shit show for this country. That's all I'll say about that. Yeah, I think with that we will wrap up this episode of the Jacob Wayne Show. No new trailer reaction. I'll try to get one of those for the next week's episode, and yeah, let's call it good. So, thanks for watching, and hopefully be back to doing this regular. Have a good night. Ta-da! Thank you for listening to the Jacob Wayne Show. If you would like to contact us, please write us at fakoshka@gmail.com. That is FAKOSHKA@gmail.com. You can find us on Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube. Simply search The Jacob Wayne Show and it should pop right up. Make sure you like and subscribe and leave a review and share this podcast with your friends. Please write us. It helps add content to the show and makes the show even better for you, the listener. Thanks for tuning in. Welcome to